I do have a lot to say on leadership, because for me, leadership was very, very difficult. I founded my first software company in California in my mid-30s, and I wasn't ready for what was to come. We had a lot of success very quickly. So much success in 2 years after starting it, I was on the front page of the newspaper. And from the outside, everything looked great. But mentally, emotionally, I was not ready for that. Even though we were successful, we were growing, we were well known, I had massive, massive imposter syndrome. Every day I was just mired in self-doubt. And all this was invisible to everybody else. And I was a good business person, I was a good manager, I understood the technology, but I wasn't showing up as a leader for my team. And that was holding us back. That was holding my team back. That was holding my organizations back. And it was difficult for me mentally and emotionally. And I'm like, I better figure this thing out. So I went and got some pretty unique education, which I'll share with you in a couple minutes. Something must have worked, because after I started changing myself as a leader and going through this transformation, we had a lot of success. We're on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies. We won the #1 best place to work, and I won Social Entrepreneur of the Year. That was externally, but internally, leadership finally became fun for the first time in my life. I was really connecting to my employees. We were giving great value to our customers. We were giving back to the community, which I think we all want to do. We just don't know how to get there. And after that journey, now I teach these things to some of the top performers in the world. Uber, Salesforce, Microsoft, the Indonesian national power company has brought me out to work with their leaders. And so if you as a leader, working for this growing company in this leadership conference, if you find yourself sometimes in really strategic meetings with the CEO of a client, and maybe holding back, not feeling comfortable, or if your team, you feel that your team is not reaching their potential, but you don't really know how to get the most out of them, maybe you get stuck in this self-doubt the same way I did and still do, then I have something to share with you. And I'm going to share with you the top 3 mindset shifts that you can make to step into a more powerful leader. And, and as Saffery, as this organization that's growing, we need you to keep doing this. We need you to keep evolving, because this scaling is going to continue, and that's what's really needed. So I'm going to share with you those 3 tips. Does that work for everybody? All right, good. We're in the right place then. But before that, I do want to tell my story, because my story is relevant. So believe it or not, this is not a Scottish accent. I'm not from Edinburgh, right? I'm a Yank. Yes, I'm American. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Anybody know where Pittsburgh is? A couple, 1 or 2. So Pittsburgh's like the Newcastle of America. It rains a lot. It's a bit blue collar, and we got a really good football team. But it's American football. It's the real football. All right, I just want to see if you're awake. I just want to see if you're all awake. So I grew up there, and look, when I grew up, I was a real nerd, a massive nerd. My dad bought me, when I was 14 years old, my dad bought me one of the first Apple II clones. It was called a Franklin, so he bought me one of the first PCs. I taught myself programming when I was 14, 15 years old in my basement. When I got older, when I was 17 or 18 or 19, when everybody was going out to the clubs and partying, what my friends and I did is we went back and we went out and we bought the latest video card and more RAM for our home computers to play the latest video games. Needless to say, I was not very popular with the ladies around those ages. Yes. And I really like computers, and I really like software. And so that's on the East Coast. Pittsburgh's a nice place to grow up, but I had a cousin who lived in California. So after I got done uni, I went out and went to California, got a job in ERP. So probably a lot of your clients use SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, correct? Whatever that is. So I'm really familiar with that. That's what I spent 25 years in. A company acquired us when I got a job out there. A company acquired us. I moved to the UK for the first time. Then I moved to Copenhagen, Singapore, and moved back. When I moved back in my mid-30s, that's when there was a gap in the marketplace, and I founded my first company. And like I said, we had all the success very quickly. But I didn't have any coaches, I didn't have any mentors. And it was that time in my life was one of the most difficult times in my life. And it was so weird, because for my whole life, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to own a business. And that's what I did. And it was growing. And from the outside, it was amazing. But I had to deal with landlords, accountants, no offense, landlords, insurance people, lawyers, all these different things. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was just winging it. And the larger we got, the more I realized I had to put on this face because I didn't want anybody to know that I had no idea what I was doing. And my biggest fear back then, it was somebody else would find out that I didn't know what I was doing. Everybody else would find out, and I would be outed as a fraud, and it would all come crumbling down. And I lived with that secret for years. And like anything else, when you hide something down, when you push something down, it gets worse and worse as you go along when you don't address it. And so as we got bigger, the cracks really started showing. I had a longtime friend quit, and he says, yeah, it's not a good culture here. And I sort of knew what a culture was, and but I didn't know how to affect it. I didn't exactly know how to do it. We lost some big clients, and then the stuff really hit the fan. I had a business partner, a key employee who I gave some equity to, assaulted me. And that led to a restraining order, a lawsuit. I went into a depression. And there's a long, dramatic story, but we don't have time for that. You got to wait for the Netflix special. Where you go on YouTube, it's all on YouTube. But it was the hardest time in my life, And I remember thinking to myself, I remember reflecting on this time, and I was in my flat, and I was just thinking, what's going on here? I achieved my dream. I have a successful company, yet I hate my life. I'm so unhappy. I just live in this constant place of stress and anxiety. And I'm like, am I broken? Am I not cut out to be a leader? Maybe I'm not a born leader. Maybe I should go back to being a programmer. It was easy. I made good money. I could handle all that. Like, no way. Screw that. I'm going for it. I got to figure this out. And I'm a good doer. I've always been a good doer, like I'm sure a lot of us are. I just realized I had the wrong goal. Because then what I did is I'm like, look, I'm going to figure this leadership thing out. That's going to be my new goal. And right around that time, I joined a group of business owners, and two of the business owners had just had this peace about them, this peace and calmness. And I've achieved a lot in my life up until then, but peace and calmness were two things I never achieved. And I found out they both went through this really unique program, and they both earned a master's degree in spiritual psychology. So I didn't really know what that was, but I went through the 2-year master program, and it changed my life. So much so that I want everybody else here to get a sense of what spiritual psychology is. So we're going to spend the next 51 minutes hugging and meditating. All right, like, guys, like, no way. UK accountants don't want to hug and meditate. No, I'm just messing around. But let me explain spiritual psychology. It's nothing to do with religion. It is. We learn the same 6 psychoanalysis techniques you would learn in a regular master's. We learn psychosynthesis, Gestalt, rational motive, etc. We learn it from a place of pure love and compassion. So we take the assumption that we're all loving beings. We're all good. But when we have things that aren't good, like we're jealous or we're angry, which we all do, that's part of the human experience, then we use psychology to clear out, this is a scientific term, the crap that's within our consciousness. And that's what I did. And that's when I started applying that to my businesses. That's when we really took off. And and leadership was so fun. And I saw, what Matthew said. He set up everything really, really well, because I really saw the effect I was having on my employees when I was helping them grow. And not just to helping them and their families. And we were able to bring people into this great culture, which I finally figured out how to create. And how much people enjoyed coming to work. And the enjoyment that our clients got. And that made me so proud. Because one time I had 3 companies, 2 in California and one in Singapore. And then I realized after 25 years in accounting software, maybe it's time for something different. And look, I know what you're thinking. When you mix accounting and software, there's nothing more sexy in the world. I'm like, I know, I was a bit of a rock star in the accounting software world, but it was and now what I do full time is I work, I coach, I train, I speak to leaders, and I teach them the same shifts that I had to go through. I actually went and got a neuroscience certificate. And I apply psychology and neuroscience to leadership. So that's what we're going to learn. I just want to share my story because I think it's relevant to what you may be going through, what we're going to talk about here. Leadership is difficult, and leadership is often forgotten. And I have what's called the leadership and competence trap. Now, who's a senior? I want you to raise your hand if you're a senior partner who has a decent amount of people report to them. Okay, you're here in the middle. I'm going to ask you some questions, though. You don't have to come up here. They're going to be simple questions. So to become a senior partner, first, how many years of education did you have to go through to become an chartered accountant? What's that? Including school? Yeah, including school. How much?
From school all the way through, 17 years.
17 years of education and experience to be that, right? And then to get to senior partner, how much more experience? How long did that take you? About 20 plus years. And how many people report to you now? 60. Sounds like a lot. Sounds like it's complicated and a lot of responsibility, right? So you had 17 years of accounting experience plus 20 years of practical experience to be a great accountant. Did you do 17 years of leadership training and 20 years of leadership experience to run that division? No, of course not. I do that every time. And it's funny because to be a great accountant, and that's what I talk about, the growth leadership, to be a great CFO, to be a great to be a chief marketing officer, we spent all this time and this energy getting great at this functional area, sales, whatever it is. And we get bachelors and masters and maybe doctors, and we take certificates, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get it, and then all of a sudden now you're in a leadership position. And you have 30 people with maybe tens of millions of dollars you're responsible for. I'd make an argument that leadership is as difficult as it is to be an accountant. But normally we give people this leadership title on a team and we send them on a 2-day training course. We're like, have at it. You're like, whoa. Because it's a totally different skill set, right? So if you, for example, if you were hiring an accountant, I'm asking questions. You guys got to give a little bit of interaction. So it's easy, though. If you were hiring an accountant, what are the top 2 or 3 things you would look for in an accountant? Nobody's hired an accountant here? What's that? Qualifications. What else? Like personality-wise? Energy? Okay. How about analytical? Right? How about really good, maybe introverted, really good at figuring out problems? Yeah, mistake-free. But if you were hiring a leader, yeah, energy might be a good one. But if you're hiring a leader, they're a total different skill set. You don't really have to be analytical to be a leader, right? You have to communicate. You have to have empathy. You have to have emotional intelligence, which are a whole different skill set than being an accountant. So when you take people and you move them, especially in your industry, into a leadership role, you have to reskill them. And what's difficult about your industry, professional services like this, is you still got to be an accountant. So you have to still keep those things as well as learn these new these new skills. And so that's why I call it the leadership and competence trap, because very rarely do we reskill people for what they need. And if you look at every statistic for leadership is not doing well worldwide. I think Gallup says the employee engagement rate worldwide is at 17%. So we have a lot of ways to go. So the mindset shifts. So I really want to share mindset shifts that you are going to be able to use in your everyday life. So we're going to go through these, and at the end I'm going to recap them. I'm going to give you one specific thing you can use, because I'm going to tell some stories, we're going to talk some theories, but I also want you to leave with things that will move the needle. So I want to talk about embracing your role as a leader. And your leadership is a reflection of the relationship with yourself. So everybody, when leaders come to me, and they're like, oh, I want to change this person, I want to change this person, we don't worry about that. We work on growing the person. There's a concept in the psychology called a projection, and that says your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And so that's what this is. And what that means is, if deep down, if you're trying to be confident, and you're trying to put on this good face, but deep down you don't trust yourself, your team Maybe like, oh, I like Mike, he's a nice guy, but deep down they don't trust you. It's exactly what Matthew said. What Matthew said, don't fake it, right? That was one of the 3 things, right? Don't fake it. Yeah, people have great intuition. We talk about authenticity and vulnerability. And the hard part is you can't tell people to be more authentic and be more vulnerable. That's like telling somebody, hey, be more funny or be more attractive. They're the results of doing other things. So your relationship with yourself, you can't tell somebody insecure to be more authentic or be more vulnerable because that's not going to go well. So we have to work on the relationship with yourself. And people ask me, Michael, when you went through all your transformation, how did you change? What moved the needle for you? Well, I realized that I was so insecure back then. I was so insecure that I was trying to be this person. I was trying to be this person that I wanted people to respect me. I wanted people to like me. So I was trying to be the person that you would respect and that you would like. And that's not authentic. And that's why I didn't connect to people, and that's what caused more stress. But when I did this work, when I got to truly know who I was, that's when things transformed. But not just knowing who I was. I got to know, like, and trust myself. So I got to know who I was, what drives me, what are my values, what do I stand for? And I get to like who that person is. That doesn't mean I was perfect, but I'd be okay with not being perfect. And I got to trust myself. I'd have that inner trust. Because what you need to do as a leader is you need to stand up in front of your team and say, look, this is who I am and this is what I believe in. And if you're good with that, then we're going to have a great team. And if you're not good with that, you need to find your way off my team. Now, I'm being a bit dramatic, but in a way, that's what it is. Your team wants to know what you're about. They want to be led. People want to be led. Say you paid $1 million to go through a 1-hour training with me. That is how much my training costs, so you know. But say you paid $1 million, and we're sitting in the training room, and it starts at 10 a.m. It's like 9:58, and I'm sort of sitting in the corner, and it's a 1-hour training, and it's like 10:01, and people are still on their phones, and I'm like, everybody, please get ready. When you're done with your phone, we'll start. And 2 or 3, and you're like, I just paid $1 million to be here. You'd be angry, wouldn't you? You'd want me to say, hey, idiot, put your phone away, get in your seat, and let's go, right? That's taking leadership. That's what people are waiting for. They want to know what you're about. They want to know your vision. They want to know where the team is going and how they fit in. That's how you perform a high-performing team. If your team doesn't know your values, if you hide who you truly are, if you're not clear about where your team's going and how they fit into that, you are missing out. You are not serving them. Jack Welch is right. It is about serving other people. It is about other people, but it is about other people, and you get there by growing yourself, by having that trust in yourself and showing up as you. There's so many dichotomies in leadership. It is about other people, but you only serve them as if you're secure in yourself. So we really need to work on ourselves so we can serve other people and serve the clients. And Matthew brought up, it doesn't matter if you lead a 3-person team, because you know what's really important? You know who that's really important to? The 2 or 3 people you lead. It's massively important to them. Or if you lead 30 or 100. Or even if you go into a sales meeting or business development meeting with a client, you need to take leadership at that meeting. They are looking to you for a solution. So it's okay to take leadership. People are looking to you for leadership. Leadership is not a bad word. It's a beautiful word. It's just like a lot of other things in the world. We see the bad, we just don't see the good. And it's up to you to show into that type of leader. And everything I teach, what I teach is called growth leadership. My latest book is Leadership Mindset 2.0. I call it leadership mindset, and now it's required reading in a lot of upper-level leadership courses, postgraduate leadership courses. And it's called Leadership Mindset 2.0 because Leadership Mindset 1.0, where I'm the boss, I'm going to tell you what to do, doesn't work. We don't like to be led that way. We don't want to just take orders. And you have a lot of, like James said, I think you said in 87 there was 8 new grads joining, and now you have 100 new grads joining. So we all got to, which is amazing growth, but we all have to deal with a lot of the younger generation now, right? And I'll tell you who does not like to be just given orders is the younger generation. A lot of people don't understand the younger generation because they will actually work massively hard, but you have to empower them. You have to give them a vision. You have to give them a purpose. If you're just giving them orders and you're frustrated they're not just carrying your orders out, then you're not serving them the way you could be serving them as a leader. So it's so important that you embrace this. And it's also important that you go through an identity shift. Because if I asked a lot of people in here, what do you do for work? You would probably say, I'm a chartered accountant, right? Or a consultant or whatever that is. But if you have people reporting to you, if I met you at a networking event, how's this? I'm going to give you a challenge. If the next person meets you at a networking event and you have people report to you and they say, hi, I'm Joe, I'm in marketing, and they say, hey, what do you do? Say, hey, I'm a leader. I know, I've never done it. I got to admit, I've never done it. It's massively uncomfortable. But why not? Like literally, if you have people report to you, your job is leadership. But why is it so weird to call yourself a leader, externally or internally? But the fact is, you are a leader, and you need to embrace that. You got to quit. I hate this. Oh, I'm a great accountant that happens to be a leader. No, that is not true. Get out of leadership if you're going to think that. You're a leader that happened to have formerly been a chartered accountant, because you need to develop your leadership skills. The thing is, the way I think of it is leadership, here's a metaphor. Leadership is like living in an apartment building. When you start your career, you start out at the ground floor, right? You're an individual contributor. You're dealing with 1 or 2 or 3 clients. You affect a little bit of things, right? But what happens on the lowest floors? It's a cheap rent, right? You're not getting that much salary. You don't have that much responsibility. But then you get promoted, and you get promoted to the higher levels. And what happens at the higher levels? Well, you affect more people. You not only affect your clients, you affect the people, you affect your team and the clients there. So you affect a greater level. You see more, which means you have a more strategic view. And then the rent is more, which means the responsibility is more. The people you affect is more, and you get paid more. You get compensated better. It's more fun. And that's what you get. But the thing is, every time you move up a level in your career, you move up the metaphorical apartment building, you have to you have to evolve your mindset. Because it's different between being a manager and a director and a partner, a senior partner, a board member, a chairman. Every one of them, it's not like, I got leadership. That just doesn't happen. It's like, okay, I got the next level of leadership. So this is a constant evolution. So as a leader, you have to be constantly reskilling yourself. Hey, I want to play a bigger game. I want to play a bigger game. I want to play a bigger game to keep moving up. But the great thing about this organization is the building keeps getting bigger. So there's more opportunities. The organization needs more leaders. They need you to keep stepping up in your leadership. And if you keep growing yourself, you're going to keep getting promoted, those higher levels. And if you don't, they're going to find somebody else. But as somebody who ran and scaled their own companies and owned companies that were scaling, I really wanted all my people to grow because I want the people that have been there for a long time to inhabit those high, the executive suites, right? The penthouse suites, because they understand it, but they needed to keep growing and growing. So that's really why you need to focus on this. All right, mindset shift 2. So now once you made the identity shift, it's really accepting that you are a leader. We're going to talk about consciousness. So let's bring this back to a psychology and a neuroscience standpoint. Now, what I call move from your ego to your authentic self. Now, your consciousness has 2 sides to it. You can be in your ego. Ego's on the right? Okay, just checking. You can be in your ego or your authentic self. You can't be at both on the same time. That's why there's a dial here. So your authentic self is your natural state when you perceive that you're safe. That's when you're relaxed. That's when you're connected. That's what your authentic self is. However, we are wired neurologically to shift into our ego when we perceive there is a danger. which it makes sense because for the last 20,000 years, we had to physically protect ourselves, right? Up until two or three generations ago. You know, if it's 1,000 years ago and I was really hungry and I was a caveman and I saw a banana and a man-eating velociraptor, what is it more important that my brain fixes on, right? The man-eating dinosaur. So anytime that there is a perceived threat, what happens is the amygdala, which is a little almond-sized thingy in your brain, sends a signal to the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal gland, and there is chemicals go into your bloodstream so that you could protect yourself, so that you could run, so that you could fight. Now, you'll know this because if you are driving, and it doesn't matter if you're driving or you're in the passenger seat and you're on the highway, on the M3, and somebody cuts you off and it looks like you're going to die for that split second. You're like, whoa! And then even after that car goes, okay, you know you're safe, you're still shaking, right? Yeah, that's because you have adrenaline, you have cortisol in your bloodstream. Your body has said, I'm in a state of, I need to protect myself. The problem is, your body doesn't know the difference between a man-eating dinosaur, you getting cut off, and the fact that you're in a meeting with that really intimidating CFO from the client, and she's talking to you, and you go into that same ego response. And you shut down, and you're not yourself, and you're not in your authentic self. Now, how this relates to leadership, and I'm going to tie it, I know talking theory, and then we're going to tie it to more practical type things, is that I ask people, what is poor leadership? And people often say micromanaging, blaming others, snapping at people, getting angry, not communicating, right? We can all agree those are poor leadership traits. Do you see how those are all behaviors of somebody trying to protect themselves? They don't feel safe. So when you're in your ego, you're not the leader you want to be. Conversely, when you're in your authentic self, when you perceive that you're safe, when your body feels safe, you have different chemicals in your body. And I ask people, what is great leadership? Great leadership is when you're transparent, when you connect to people, when you have empathy. Those are all behaviors of somebody who feels safe. And so the more you can show up in your authentic self, the more people, and again, like we talked about, people know you're faking it. People have great intuition. And when people are around you in your authentic self, then they connect to you, then they trust you, then they're loyal to you, then they respect you from a really positive place. So if the only thing you get out of here in this whole presentation is to understand sometimes in your ego and sometimes in your authentic self, and you can start to be aware of when you're in your ego and shift to your authentic self, that can be life-changing. And whether it's around your kids, whether it's around your spouse, whether it's in a business meeting, the more you can realize when you're in your ego. And my question to you, and you can just answer this in your head, is what happens in your ego? What does it feel like? When you get intimidated, when you perceive somebody's coming at you, maybe you start to push back. For me, like I often withdraw. I often feel like I withdraw. And when you can realize that, and you can say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going into my ego right now. Hey, I'm safe." And then you can live more from that authentic self. And the authentic self, people are like, well, is the authentic self weak? I'm like, no, the authentic self is massively powerful when you're in your authentic self. The authentic self is a person who's going to stand up for themselves. Because with the ego, I don't know about you, but sometimes I avoid conflict. I don't maybe stand up when I don't maybe confront somebody when I think they're being unethical, or I don't, something's going wrong, right? That's my ego trying to protect itself. So when you're on your authentic self, you do have those difficult conversations, but you have them from a conversation of growing the other person. You have that authentic conversation earlier rather than later. You have it from a place of positivity. People say, hey, is firing somebody an ego or an authentic self action? It's not the action, it's why you do it and how you do it. Because sometimes people should be let go from your team and your organization. Obviously not a lot, but if somebody if you worked with somebody and they violated the ethics and they did something really wrong, they have to be let go. And you have to do that in service to the rest of your team. And how you show up to let them go, and if you make it really personal and you're like, you're an idiot, you're going to get fired, that's your ego. But you can show up in your authentic self and you just say, hey, look, we really tried to make this work. However, what you did is not acceptable with what we did. We tried to work with you, a coach, and so we're going to have to let you go. I just showed up in my authentic self. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And like I said, everything that I teach everything how you use it on yourself, but everything, because these are psychological, neurological principles, it's not just everything that I teach you is applicable to yourself and other people. So for example, say I have this lady, she's a bit younger, she's newer to the company, but she's been doing an amazing job. And then I have this big client, this big important client, and I invite her along to participate in the meeting. This is the first meeting she's ever been like this. And she gets in, and I notice she's sitting there like this. And as we're going through the 1-hour meeting, I ask her a couple questions. She just answers with a yes or a no. But you could tell she's uncomfortable. So after the meeting, I'm like, hey, what was going on? And if I think about it, what was going on with her? She's intimidated. Of course she's intimidated. I was intimidated the first big client meeting I went to, too. She was in her ego. There's nothing wrong with being in their ego, but it's something as a leader we can address. So maybe what I want to do is I want to take her to the side and say, hey, I just want to let you know I believe in you. You got this. I invited you to this meeting because I know you can do that. And then you build her confidence. Because when you can help people build that confidence, when you believe in the people, it's funny, I find leaders believe in some of their team more than the team believes in their team. And when they feel that from you, then they grow. It's like you're their champion. And I think from a humanistic standpoint, there's nothing more we can do than to give people confidence and have them step into that confidence. And in this case, we do this in a leadership and a business situation. And when you can work with those people, give them that more confidence, believe in them, then they grow. And that's where you get massively great loyalty. That's when you get people that will follow you everywhere when you're a leader. If you've ever heard a leader going from one place to another and like, yeah, 2 people followed me, that's awesome. Because they love your leadership so much because you're adding to their growth. To me, that's really what we mean by ego and authentic self. So the third thing I want to talk about is creating the space for authenticity. Creating the space for authenticity. So again, we got to be careful with authenticity and vulnerability because it's often thrown out there. Be more authentic, be more vulnerable, be a better leader. There's so much more depth that needs to be to go into this. Anybody here Google Project Aristotle? It's really famous. You did. Come up here and tell us all about it. No, I'm just joking. Do you know why they called it Aristotle? Aristotle said the whole is, what did he say? The whole is more than the sum of the parts. That's an Aristotle quote, I think. Don't Google it. It's something like that, everybody. But they called it Aristotle. And it's really hard to measure leadership because every team's different, every industry is different. You don't know if it's the leader or different things. But what they did is in 2012, they surveyed 120 of their teams. And they have enough teams that they could get some data out of this. So they got quantitative data. They did interviews, everything else. And because they wanted to find out what made a high-performing team. Now, if I asked everybody what made a high-performing team, we would get a lot of the things that's on this next slide because they found here's what didn't affect performance. Whether they were in person or virtual didn't affect performance. Whether they did consensus-driven making, by the seniority of the team and the seniority of the leader. All that was irrelevant to the success of their team. The number one thing they did find that drove performance is what they call psychological safety, where team members feel safe. They feel safe to take risks. They feel safe to fail. They feel safe to speak up. That's what they meant by psychological safety. And did I do a good job of explaining it? So? Okay. Oh, you're building on it later. Okay, great. And so that's a great thing to ask yourself. Are you building psychological safety in your team? Are you encouraging it? What's interesting is that as accountants, you are almost, you get better when you're good at finding problems, right? That's the whole definition of an audit. Most of you have done audits, right? Audit is go find what's wrong. So you're training yourself to go more into finding problems. And we all want to have a high-performing team. We all want people to be perfect all the time. But if you want your team to take more initiative, you want your team to be more creative, you can't expect perfection. And so many leaders, it's like, I want my team to take more initiative and be more creative. And it's like, well, how are you fostering that in your team? And so when we talk about authenticity and vulnerability, the first thing you want to do is model it. The first thing you want to do is model it. And let me give you one or two quick stories about modeling it. I was president of the board of directors for Conscious Capitalism chapter in California, where it was a startup of a chapter of a larger national organization, and we worked really hard to get this off the ground. So we had this great, amazing event where we had 250 business leaders from around the area. It went amazingly. And then summer was coming up, so I wanted to try to squeeze one more event in before the summer holidays. In America, we do take holidays as well, no matter what you guys heard. And at the board meeting, I said, hey, we're running out of time. I'd like to try to run this event, but I don't know if it's going to work. Let's do it as an experiment. And we devoted some resources to it, and it was going to be a CEO event. So we needed at least 8 people, if not 12 to 15. Well, we met a couple weeks later, and only one person has signed up. And so I said, okay, you know what? This is my idea. It was a bad idea. We made a risk, didn't work. Let's cancel it. My bad. I totally take full responsibility for this. Has anybody got anything to say? Everybody, no, that's good. Like, okay, let's go on to the next thing. Look, I had an idea that didn't work. It's okay. That doesn't mean I'm a bad leader, a bad person, but I like to take risks. So when you're in front of your team, are you taking that ownership? Are you saying, you know what, I tried something that didn't work. You can try stuff that didn't work. For me as a leader, I'd rather somebody take the initiative and screw it up every so often, but at least they took the initiative. So when somebody takes the initiative and it didn't work, the first thing that you're saying, hey, I really appreciate that you jumped on that. Let's talk about how we can do it better next time. But I want you to do it every time. Yeah. That's one thing you really want to check yourself of how you lead your team. Another thing happened when we talk about having authenticity and vulnerability and taking ownership is my buddy Blake was coaching Tom. He's the CEO of a medium-sized company. And he had this lady, Layla, who was a longtime salesperson for him. And what happened is Tom and Layla were butting heads. And it seemed like every time Tom would come in, him and Layla would get into this argument. It started getting to the point where they started yelling at each other almost every day. And so Blake tried to work with Layla, tried to work with Tom, get them on the same page, but he just wasn't working. And finally, Tom came in and he's like, look, Blake, I want to fire Layla. I'm tired of this. I deserve respect. I own the business. I'm the CEO. She's not respecting me as a leader. Well, Blake found out that Layla accounted for 65% of his new product sales. And Blake said, well, Tom, I got one more thing to try. Tom's like, what's that? He's like, I think you should apologize to her. What do you think Tom said? No way, she's an idiot. She's wrong. She's this, she's that. So Blake held up the roster of employees and said, okay, well, if you're going to get rid of 60% of your new product sales, which half of the people are we going to lay off at the same time? Because if you're going to lose all that, you have to cut your company down. Tom was like, obviously that's the worst thing in the world he'd ever want to do. And so he's like, I definitely don't want to do that. So what's this apologizing thing look like? So Blake worked with him. And then next day, Tom asked Layla to go to lunch with him. Of course, Layla thinks she's getting fired, right? Boss is asking me out to lunch. They get out to lunch, very uncomfortable drive out there, very uncomfortable until they order. And then, they order, the waitress goes away. And Tom takes a deep breath. Layla, I apologize. You've actually been doing your job. You've been bringing sales in, but I've been failing you as a leader because I haven't been supporting you. He said, I just want to say thank you and I apologize. And he said there was 10 of the most uncomfortable seconds when she just looked at him. And then she just started crying and say, thank you. All I want to do is be appreciated and be recognized. And then what she said is, you know what? I've been acting like a child too. I apologize. And then they laughed about it. And then they had the greatest conversation ever because she had all these ideas which she never brought up because he wouldn't have listened to her. And now, fast forward a couple of years, they're in a whole new stratosphere. She's VP of sales. Now look at what that CEO could have done. He could have stayed in his ego, put that in his pocket and say, you know what, I'm going to fire her because I had every reason. He would have every reason in the world to have fired her. But he put his ego in his pocket, didn't he? Because it's up to him to take leadership of this situation. He's the owner. And that's what he did. And he led with authenticity and vulnerability. The thing is, when you didn't know that, when he said that, he wasn't even sure what he was going to get back from her. She could have said, you are an idiot. You should apologize to me, and maybe. So he took a risk. That's the thing about vulnerability. Being vulnerable is a risk. But that's what you need as a leader. You need to develop the resilience to handle the ups and downs. That brings us to our next thing, is find your confidence. Think of a leader you look up to, whether it's in business, it's in sports, it's in politics. They have a confidence about them. There's never been an insecure leader like I want to follow that person. People follow confidence. But here's what I get, especially in UK and Europe. I don't want to be arrogant. Like, hold on a second. Over here we have shyness, and over here we have arrogance. In the middle we have confidence. Shyness is ego-based. Shyness is, I don't trust myself in the world, so I'm going to be shy. So shyness is a state of ego. It's a hiding. Arrogance is, I'm going to go on the offense. I don't trust people to see me, so I'm going to go on the offense so I never have to be seen. That's what arrogance is. That's an insecurity as well. But in the middle is this beautiful place called confidence. And the thing is, confidence is not talking a lot or knowing everything. Confidence is often quiet confidence. How many times have you been in a meeting and 2/3 of the way through the meeting, somebody's been quiet the whole time, just asked the most profound question? Whoa, that's it. Or lets people go and do what they need to do. And the confidence, this is so important, this is so key. The confidence isn't that you know everything. The confidence is that you're going to move ahead without knowing everything. And that no matter what happens, you and your team got it covered. It's moving forward with uncertainty and with trust and with faith. When it came to the pandemic, I worked with a lot of business owners. They were going through the worst time in their lives. And once we triaged things for a couple of weeks, I'm like, look, you have to address your employees. You have to address your employees. And they're like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, you don't have to know what to say. They're not looking for a specific list of what you're going to do to get them out of this. But you have to tell them you're going to make it. And you have to believe that 100%. If you believe that 99%, they're going to pick up on that 1%. You don't. You have to internally commit that you're going to make it out of this thing nobody could have done. And you don't even have to tell them how you get there. Everybody needs to have a hope and a faith. And that rides on you as a leader. That's why leadership's difficult. You have to carry that positivity. You have to carry that forward-looking vision. You have to carry that. And you bring people along because people want to work for a winning team. They want to work for a growing team. They want to work for something positive. That's where amazing things happen. And so that's what you need to do. You have to find that confidence, and you have to have the confidence in your teammates. That's how the people that report to you, you have to find that confidence with it. You have to have confidence in them, and they will feed off of your confidence. Your confidence in them will be transferred to the confidence in themselves, and that's how you're going to grow your team. I know a lot of you are from consulting backgrounds, so I wanted to do a matrix. I know you guys love matrix. So what we have is we have confidence and vulnerability, and you need both together. Because if you don't have confidence and you don't have vulnerability, you don't have credibility as a leader. Now, if you have vulnerability and confidence, if you're vulnerable without confidence, people aren't going to have faith in you. Because there's a healthy vulnerability and an unhealthy vulnerability. Say I'm in a plane. Say I'm sitting in a plane, and the pilot pops out of the cockpit, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, there's engine problems. I don't know what to do." Was the pilot authentic? Yes. Was the pilot vulnerable? Yes. Is that probably a healthy thing to do? Probably not. So just because you're authentic and vulnerable doesn't mean it's a healthy thing to do. But you have to be careful with your vulnerability. Vulnerability is like anything else. There's a proper way to use it and an improper way to do it. And when you have the vulnerability without the confidence, then people aren't going to have faith. Just the same, when people are confident with without vulnerability, they're not trustworthy. If I came up here and I just talked about how all my successes, you'd be like, he's a successful guy, but I don't really connect with him. You know, the first thing I told you, I was really honest with you. It's like leadership was difficult for me. It still can be difficult for me. And when I tell you that, do you feel a little bit more connected to me? A little bit more like, hey, this guy's going to tell the truth? I hope so, because that's why I share that with you. It's not fun for me to share all my screw-ups, but I know it's important because I wanted to let you know that I go through this, and that's why I help people go through the same thing. To me, that's important to me. So that's when we get these leaders that all they do is talk about, or speakers or whatever it is, all they talk about is how amazing they are. Oftentimes it feels a bit hollow. So you as a leader, are you showing up with a bit of healthy vulnerability? Because when you show up with that healthy vulnerability and you show up with that confidence, that's when you get a truly high-performing team. That's when you get people that really trust you. That's when you get people that believe in you. And I talked about encourage it. How can you put this into your everyday life? How can you put this into your meetings? Are you encouraging people to be authentic? Are you encouraging people to be vulnerable? So after you're authentic and you're vulnerable in a very healthy way, are you okay with people taking risks? Are you okay with people not being perfect? And how do you bring that into your everyday life? All right, those are the mindset shifts I wanted to share, and we'll recap them right at the end for a second. The other thing I wanted to do is, I know we have an AI expert, and I'm not going to actually talk about AI. What I did is I always try to meet my leaders where they are. So when AI started getting more and more popular, and my clients started asking me, what does this mean for me as a leader? What my team and I did is we did a wide-ranging study. So we looked at all the information out there. We studied the people connected to us. I don't know, we had like 500 people answer a survey. I did interviews, et cetera. Because I wanted to know how the role of a leader changes now that AI is here. And especially in your industry. AI is going to do a lot of accounting. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of rote stuff. So and I'm just going to share one specific thing about that, the whole survey. I have a survey, a white paper, executive briefing, et cetera, but I just want to boil it down to this, that currently, and this is just conceptual, I didn't do a study on this, the average leader in the world, 25% of it's management, right? Managing, this, managing that, projects, meetings, et cetera. 25% of it, you need to know how technology works. 25% is your functional area. That means if you're a chief marketing officer, 25% is probably still in marketing. Leadership is maybe 25%, inspiring your team, et cetera. The thing is, your functional area and technology and management are going to be, AI is going to take over a lot of that. So in the future, you're going to need to be more of a leader. Because what AI is not going to be able to do is have strategic conversations with high-level clients. AI is not going to motivate and inspire your team. AI is not the system that's going to hold people accountable. So you are going to have to develop your leadership skills. A lot of people get into leadership positions, and what they do is they rely on their existing knowledge. Yeah, I'm an okay leader, but I'm a really good accountant. Yeah, fair enough. But that's going to be taken away. That crutch is going to be taken away as we move more into the AI. You're going to have to be a people leader. So these are your 3 mindset shifts. So embrace your role as a leader. And just to anchor this in to how you can do this every day, just be aware of how you call yourself, your internal dialogue. And make sure your internal dialogue says, you know what, I am the leader. My team needs me to be the leader. How can I show up as a leader? What does the team need from me as the leader? Accept the fact that you're the leader. Embrace the fact that you're a leader. What more new skills do I need? What am I struggling with? What can I go for coaching for? Whatever it is. What can I do? So that's the first thing you do. 2 is to move yourself and others from your ego to your authentic self. When do you show up in your ego? Who triggers you into your ego? Maybe there's somebody from your organization. Maybe there's somebody from the clients. Maybe there's somebody from your personal life. And whenever I'm around them, I shift into my ego. Maybe there's a certain situation. Maybe I don't like speaking in front of people. That shifts me into your ego. Because the thing is, just by reflecting on when you're in your ego, you at least move to the middle. You may not be in your authentic self, but just by the process of reflection, you often move out of your ego state. And maybe you're about to get on a phone call or a Zoom or a Teams or whatever it is, and you can just ask yourself right now, am I my ego or my authentic self? Oh, I feel a bit defensive. Why am I defensive? Because this one person triggers me. Okay, what can I do about that? You know what? I'm safe here. I'm safe. And what would it be? What do I need to move into my authentic self right now? How can I be my best? How can I show up there? It's often that simple. I don't always remember to do it, but when I do, it's very, very powerful. 3rd is create the space for authenticity. Look at your team. How can you bring more of this vulnerability? How can you bring more of this authenticity? Start with yourself. How are you doing it? How can you encourage others to do it in a really positive, safe way? There are so many different ways to do that. And then AI means you have to lead more. So work on your leadership skills. Figure out where you need to grow as far as relating to others, emotional intelligence, relationships, communication, etc. Now, I'm going to finish up here in a minute, but before I tell you, I'm going to be around here. We're going to go to lunch right after this, and I'm going to be around for lunch. I love talking about this, so if you have questions, if you have comments, something that was insightful, please come up and tell me. I love connecting. It's great being out here on stage, but I love connecting with each individual person afterwards. And afterwards, Mark and I are going to sit down and have what they call a fireside chat. We're going to bring 2 seats up and have a discussion about leadership. And so if you have questions you want me to address in front of everybody, drop me a note, drop Mark a note, tell us. I think we'll ask, if we get done with all the questions people submit, we'll also open it up. But sometimes some of these questions are easier just not in front of your whole peer group, but we'll handle them however you want. So we will have a bit of a conversation about leadership. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, we talk about relationship with yourself, and I talk about how the spiritual psychology course I went to was all about love and compassion. And the compassion is for other people, but remember, everything that I do starts with you. And so it's really about the compassion for yourself. If you're in this room, you've done amazing things. You've taken on amazing responsibilities. You've probably worked a ton of hours. You probably take risks. You probably take on problem clients. You probably take on all sorts of stuff we will never even know about. And you probably can be really hard on yourself. I know I can. I still am. And if there's anything that I can leave you with, it's just give yourself a break. Give that compassion to you When you catch yourself doing that, think about all the amazing things that you do, all the amazing people that you help, and give yourself that compassion. And that compassion for yourself is going to make you a stronger leader for everybody else. Thank you.